Hi, and welcome to BeebeFlicks. This is where your friendly BB librarians talk about what we've been watching lately. I'm Brigid from the reference department, and joining me today are Jeff from the reference department, Alyssa from the reference department, and Amanda back from maternity leave from our children's department. So we're very excited to have her here for her first time. So I'm going to start first with what I've been watching. I have actually been watching two things that are on Disney Plus, or what I want to talk about. And one is a documentary. They're both nonfiction shows. One is a documentary, and one is a nonfiction television show. They're about half-hour long episodes. So the show that I want to talk about is called Prop Culture. It's on Disney Plus, and it is a show about a person who collects movie props. And so he goes and he does like movie memorabilia and movie props. And I will say all of the movies are Disney movies, as would make sense because it's on Disney Plus. And they go and they find some of the original props that were used in different movies. They talk to people who made the movies, the stars, the writers, the directors, those kinds of people. And they've even done like some restoration of some of these props and sort of talking about movie memorabilia collection in general. And if you have any interest in kind of how to make movies, it has a little bit of that. It's also just like a nice nostalgic look at movies you probably have seen and enjoyed. So each episode is a different movie where they go through it. So one of the episodes is about Tron, the original Tron, where they go and they look at some of the original like props from Tron, like the arcade sign and then some of the costumes. And in that, they interview the director of Tron and Bruce Boxleitner, who starred in Tron, both appear in the episode.
Wasn't that like the early 80s?
It was, yes. So that's kind of a fun, like that's one of them. They also talked about Nightmare Before Christmas and talked to Henry Selick, who made Nightmare Before Christmas, and have a lot of the like puppets and the little like stop motion animation things. They have a name that maquettes, that's what they're called, maquettes, that they use to make the movie. So that's kind of interesting. And like how to make a stop motion animation movie, they really go into that. And they don't interview Tim Burton in that episode. They do talk about Tim Burton because obviously that was his idea. He wrote it. He didn't a lot of the movie was executed by Henry Selick, but he came up with the idea and the concept. And I think some people don't know, but Tim Burton did work for Disney in the 80s in the animation department. So that's how he sort of made that movie. So they sort of talk about that as well.
So each episode kind of focuses on one film?
Yes, so each episode is one film. So you could just watch one if you're like particularly interested in, say, Nightmare Before Christmas. You could just watch that one and you would get all of the information about that. But kind of as a whole, it's really interesting to see like how much stuff is still out there and it's in like the Disney vault, and talking to people who made these movies. So it's kind of an interesting, fun look at one particular kind of like movie enthusiast and how you use it. So I like that. I also I don't know if a lot of people saw it, but there was just Rick Moranis was just in a commercial for a cell phone company recently this week, and it was kind of a big deal because he has really retired from acting and being in front of the camera. He hasn't like appeared in anything, but he does appear in an episode of Prop Culture that is about Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. So that he was in that before this commercial. So if you are a Rick Moranis fan, you could have that chance to see it. So it's fun, really for the whole family. Like it'd be interesting to adults, but interesting to kids too. So it's kind of you learn a little bit about how to make movies and like the kinds of people that make movies, and a nice like nostalgic look at things that you maybe have forgotten about a little bit. So
like
yeah, so I think that's a fun, like a good afternoon of entertainment. I think there are like 8 episodes. Enjoyable. The other thing that I want to talk about is also sort of a nostalgic look back at at Disney films of the past. And it's called Howard. It's a documentary about Howard Ashman, who is, if you are around my age, so in your mid 30s to probably a little bit younger than me and a little bit older than me, you probably grew up watching all of the movies that he wrote the music for, but you don't necessarily know that because you were a kid, so you didn't know that. But if you liked The Little Mermaid or Aladdin or Beauty and the Beast, he is the man who is responsible for that. He essentially is probably the most important person in Disney animation who is not an animator in any way, but probably more than anyone defined like what the Disney Renaissance animation films look like and feel like. And he didn't pick up a single pen to draw anything ever, but he was the lyricist behind all of those big, huge movies. He won multiple Oscars. He also wrote Little Shop of Horrors, the off-Broadway hit in the 80s. So if you like Little Shop of Horrors, he wrote that. So this documentary sort of explores his legacy and the work that they did. And there's no on-camera interviews. Everybody is voiceover over archival footage and photos and images from the films as well. One of the reasons why you would make a documentary about him is that he died in 1993 of AIDS. It was very tragic, very young. He was in his 40s. He probably could have made many more films, but those are the ones that he made because he did die of AIDS. And so the movie sort of explores that as well and his legacy. I found it a tremendously moving documentary because it really is like a person who we should have a lot more work from and a lot more information. He should have been able to do a lot more, and he wasn't. He had this happen to him, and I think it's a really fitting tribute. And honestly, if all it does is inspire you to watch those movies that he worked so hard on, then it probably did its job. So I would recommend that as well. It's there's another documentary also on Disney Plus called Waking, Sleeping, Beauty, which is more generally about sort of the Disney Renaissance and the creation of animated films, which is made by the same person. So if you like this one, you probably would like that one as well. Those are my two suggestions for now.
You already said they're both on Disney Plus.
They're both on Disney Plus, yeah. And so they're both on Disney Plus, and they are both about Disney in their general way, but I think are really good use of Disney Plus too, because it's like obviously looking at their own content that you could then go watch. Like if you watch the Tron episode of Prop Culture, you could then be like, I'd really like to watch Tron, and you can, like it's right there. But are sort of expanding the legacy of what Disney is and letting it be really known. So I think those are both good things. So that's what I'm going to say. Howard, about Howard Ashman on Disney Plus, and Prop Culture, also on Disney Plus. All right, Jeff, what are you up to today?
So for something very different, I've been wanting to talk about this for a while, but I had to finish it first. I'm going to talk about a Netflix series called Dark, which came out last year, and they just, earlier this summer, they released the third and final season. And it is pretty final. There's no question, like that's it. They wrapped up the story. It's very hard to talk about because I don't want to reveal anything. But what I can tell you is that it is dark. It's another one of Netflix's foreign series. They've done a lot over the past couple of years, creating studios in a number of other countries, Spain, I'm forgetting, but anyway, the various other countries in Europe and elsewhere. And this one is German, so it is in German with German subtitle, with English subtitles rather, and it's been compared to a lot of different things, none of which I think are very accurate comparisons. Probably the things that come to my mind, it's been compared many times to Stranger Things, but it is much darker than that. It doesn't have the humor that Stranger Things does, and it doesn't have, I think one of the big appeals of Stranger Things is the real 80s nostalgia that goes along with the characters and the humor and stuff. And Dark has none of that. It's very German. In fact, it takes place in a little town called Vinton, where it seems to rain constantly. And it's the other thing that I would kind of compare it to is going back a couple of decades to Twin Peaks, which was pretty groundbreaking television at the time, and definitely you couldn't pigeonhole it as one genre or another. So the general idea behind Dark is that it starts off as a pretty standard mystery. This is a small town in Germany, and a young kid goes missing. So it's a police procedural where they're trying to figure out where this kid went. But then it turns out there's another missing kid, and there was another kid missing 33 years ago. And it quickly starts to, well, actually, I shouldn't even say quickly. It's more of a slow burn. It starts out as this mostly traditional kind of, what was the British series that was so popular? The murder series.
Broadchurch.
Broadchurch, thank you. It starts out very much as a Broadchurch style a community with lots of really well-drawn characters that know each other and have secrets and stuff like that. But it eventually becomes science fiction. And it happens so slowly that you don't almost realize that it's happening. What I can tell you about it without revealing anything or spoiling anything is that it involves time travel. So there are multiple timelines, and you see characters. It can be very confusing because you see the same characters at different stages in the past and the future and at different ages. So there are literally scores of websites out there where people have tried to create the family trees so that you can understand who's related to who and how, and the timelines so that you can follow stuff. And you definitely should not read any of that before watching the program, because part of what's enjoyable is just finding yourself completely lost and trying to put the puzzle pieces together yourself. And then once you've watched it, you can go back and try to put things together. So I watched the third season, maybe finished that about a month ago, and was quite satisfied with the way you could see from this kind of program that you wondered if they were going to just veer off in such a weird direction that they wouldn't be able to get out again, and that they would resolve the mystery and all of the weird things that were going on in a totally unsatisfying way. And they didn't. I was really pleased that I thought the ending actually made sense in the universe and was a very satisfying ending. Beyond that, I really can't tell you much of anything because I can't explain it. I'm actually watching it again now. I'm halfway through season 2 because I felt now that I know what's going on, I wanted to watch it again with that knowledge. Kind of in the same way, Brigid, a few episodes ago, you talked about watching Lost again. And it's that same kind of feeling, like the first time through is the enjoyment of the mystery. And then once you know everything, it's kind of fun to watch it again, knowing what you know now and seeing if you have the same reactions. It really is confusing. It's very confusing. And some people have been frustrated by that. And I think you just have to say, I don't care. Like, I'm just going to kind of go with the flow. And I don't remember who that woman is. Like, who is she? She's related to who? Oh, it's the same woman as that other woman, but she's in this timeline. And just not worry about it. And I think if you do like character, and I think I say this every episode, character is really important to me in anything that I read or anything I watch. And I think they did a very good job with this, making the characters believable and real. And particularly given that you see them over a long period of time where you're actually seeing characters who are in their 40s with kids in one episode, but then you see them as teenagers played by a completely different actor. And then you see them in their 80s. And I think the way they cast a single character over those different timelines, I think they did a really good job of that. So if you want the kind of science fiction that is just kind of mind bending, that makes you think, I want to go out and read a whole bunch of books now about the nature of time, because of this is just the kind of show that makes you want to do that. You want to like understand. And somebody thought this through very well, because I remember Twin Peaks was a good example of that, where the first season was really good. And then you kind of got the sense that after that, they just were kind of having fun and didn't really have a plan. And this, you can tell that somebody actually took the time to think through the whole universe and how it was going to fit together, to end up having an ending that makes logical sense. So if you like that kind of stuff, I highly, highly recommend it. It's on Netflix, and it's not actually that long. Each season has maybe 8. I think the first 2 seasons have 8 episodes and the last one has 10. So it's not a huge investment, and you definitely are gonna, it's hard not to immediately want to watch the next one to figure out what's going on, because it's a puzzle. If you like any kinds of fiction that are puzzle related, this is a TV version of the same thing.
Oh, that sounds interesting. I mean, I do love a good puzzle show sometimes. Not right now because my brain is mush, but
yeah,
it's nice. Alyssa, what are you watching?
So I have been watching and enjoying Lovecraft Country, which is on HBO. Yeah.
Yes, you need to tell me about this.
Yes. So it's on Sunday nights at 9, and they just aired the 4th episode of 10 this past Monday. So it is based on a book, Lovecraft Country, that the premise is, what if we have the cosmic horror of Lovecraft, but also 1950s racism? And so they sort of intersect, and you have 2 very smart characters. One thing that I don't like about horror is how dumb characters are. And these, you have Atticus Freeman, who is a very bookish Korean War veteran. All main characters are African American, and he doesn't really get along with his father. They have a strained relationship, but he gets along with his similarly bookish uncle, who is writing what we know is the Green Book, the travel guide.
Oh.
And there's also Letitia Lewis, who is an artist. She's a photographer, I think, and she is involved sort of tangentially in civil rights causes. And so Atticus is living in Jim Crow, Florida. He's also known as Tick. So there's Tick and Letty. And he comes back to Chicago, where he was raised, when he hears, he gets a letter from his father about his mother's dead, but he found something about his mother's parentage in Arkham, which is in Massachusetts, and, was a Lovecraft setting. And so it has, like I said, I'm not a fan of horror, but I really enjoy the historical nature of it. It's really based on the setting and historical events, and the family drama. Like no character really gets along with everybody in their family, but they also, it has some really good people behind it. We have executive producers J.J. Abrams, Jordan Peele, and the showrunner is Misha Green, who is a Black woman, and the author of the book is white, but she is the showrunner, and it's just so good. And I'm not lost like I would by watching Dark, but it's not predictable either. Like, I probably figure out what's going to happen probably the second before it happens, and so that's really nice. And
have you read any of the original Lovecraft stories?
I have
compare?
not. No. I was reading before this sort of like the themes of Lovecraft, and one of his themes is like the alienness of parentage,
Hmm.
and that is explored, as well as like the slimy monsters. You do get to see
Yeah.
some monsters in it too.
I remember being on a Lovecraft kick years ago, and they were kind of repetitive after a while. They tend to be kind of similar, but they're fun anyway. So I'm actually, this has been on my list for a while.
Yeah. The book is available on Hoopla, I will say.
Oh.
It's always available on Hoopla if you'd like to read the book Lovecraft Country. I saw the first 2 episodes and I agree. I really liked it. And yes, it's like you can predict things before they happen, but not like, it's not like the most predictable, but you're like, oh, don't trust those people. And then true enough, they don't trust them. So
No.
they're smart. So they know what's going on, which is good.
I will say one bit. They said that Mr. Braithwaite was very kind to his slaves, and about like a second, I'm like, oh yeah, I kind of get how he was kind to them. So
Yeah. And also I think the Journey Smollett Bell, who plays Letitia, her outfits are amazing.
yes, that's
Costumes, perfect. So, and that's on HBO, right?
yes, at 9:00, still airing. You can't binge it quite yet.
No.
You can watch some of them if you.
I hate this old-fashioned TV where you have to watch it at a particular time and wait for the next episode. It's like going back to my childhood.
It drives the anticipation.
So now, Amanda, what have you been watching?
Okay, well, I have been watching a variety of things. So I'll start with the one that is on Amazon Prime. It's called The Boys, and it is actually also the first season is all out, but the second season is still airing, and I think they dropped 3 episodes on last Friday, but now they're just going to do 1 episode every Friday. So I have to wait till tonight to continue our story. But it's about it's a world in which superheroes are real and people know all about them, and they are managed by this big company called Vought. So Vought is the one that markets them. It gets all the superhero movies out. They're the ones that parade them. They do the advertising. So it's this multi-billion-dollar company that runs the superheroes. But part of managing superheroes is managing the destruction that they do. So if somebody gets hurt or buildings crash down, collateral damage during a fight, Vought swoops in and kind of makes it all go away. So it's kind of about how when these superheroes get so powerful, there's no one there to stop them because nobody in the public knows that they can do all these terrible things, that they can blow up buildings and they can kill people who are innocent because they've got this manager behind them who's sweeping it all under the rug. So it starts, the first episode starts with the main character, Huey, who's a normal person. He's a kid. He's played by, I don't remember his first name. His last name is Quaid because he's the son of Meg Ryan and Dennis Quaid. Yeah, so he's like, this young 23-year-old kid, and his girlfriend just gets killed accidentally by one of the supers, and nothing is like, there's no real apology. Like, he realizes like these supers are getting away with all of this stuff, and so he joins a gang of the boys who are working to take down the superheroes and the company. And then and they've all been injured by supers in some way. And there's one character who is a super who is new to the group. So there are a ton of different superheroes, but there's the 7, which would be like the Justice League or the Avengers. They're the main superheroes that are marketed the most. And they, so every time there's an opening because a superhero dies or needs to be shuffled to the side for some reason, they have an opening and they do auditions for people who with powers too. So this new girl is blonde and pretty, and she's like your girl next door. You know, she really believes in doing good. She really wants to help people. And then she comes into this environment and finds out that it is not at all what she expected. You know, she gets sexually assaulted by one of the supers her first day on the job, and she feels powerless, like she's a superhero, and she just realizes that she's pretty much powerless. So she and Huey end up meeting, and she's kind of like the spy on the inside. But it's really interesting. It's again, it's all about like unchecked power, basically, because nobody can stop these superheroes. They can't really be killed in conventional ways. And then there's also like the big company has also started manufacturing supervillains so that these superheroes can get more work, and it's all hidden from the American public. And so yeah, it's interesting. It's very dark, very dark. We were joking that Huey basically ends up in blood and organs every episode, just so covered in somebody else's or some other things. But it's interesting. It does have a little bit of humor, but it's mostly quite dark. So that's on Amazon Prime. And then on Hulu, I've been watching The Great, which is very, 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 very loosely based on Catherine the Great. It's basically, they took the names and the location and the fact that she was trying to stage a coup, and then they just played with everything else. And that's, you know, it's a period drama, but it's also got a lot of humor in it as well. It's really kind of over the top and ridiculous, but it's fun. It's I wouldn't call it lighthearted exactly, because some things are pretty terrible. Like in the last episode I watched, the emperor thinks that there is somebody trying to kill him, which technically there is, but it's not the people he thinks. But he decides to torture the entire court. So like everybody in the castle is getting their fingernails pulled, they're getting bricks dropped down on their head, and yeah, it's fun things like that. And it's not appropriate for kids at all. I would say it's both of these shows I've talked about are definitely adult content. But if you're looking for,
I was gonna say, The Great has been on my list because it kind of reminded me of The Favorite, like Lanthimos movie from I think now 2 years ago. And I really liked that. So where it's like, it's a period piece, but it's kind of weird, and it's not like all the same kind of staid like bonnets and that kind of more like fun.
I'm always leery of historical things that are really not historically accurate, but it's gotten really good reviews, I think, precisely because they kind of just go out and have fun with it.
Yeah, they are not trying to be historically accurate at all. And yeah, it reminded me of The Favorite as well, especially since Nicholas Hoult is the emperor in The Great, and he was in The Favorite as well. And his, you know, he's a great actor. He's really good in it. I mean, he's the kind of person, he's not a great person, but you still like him, and you know he's going to die at some point, because
you could always,
the character did.
They could always take the Black Sails approach. If anyone watched Black Sails, the pirate show, where there are various characters who either shouldn't have died or should have died, and some of the characters who shouldn't have died, they were just like, you know what, they died here in this time, which is like decades before they actually died. And then there were people who like should have died if they were being historically accurate, and instead they're like, they're still alive, it's fine, whatever, who cares.
Did anybody watch Versailles? Because that's kind of, I wondered if it's similar. I loved that show. It was like, I think they did 3 seasons of that. And it was basically an excuse for palace intrigue and sex and like gorgeous costumes and all that kind of stuff.
That sounds exactly like what the
Yeah.
Brigid is like.
I think I watched one episode, I think, of Versailles, but the problem I have with a lot of things that are based on real people is I'm like, did that actually happen? And I keep looking up like throughout the show, and then I
you
read
discover it's like, no, not really at all. But I think you have to kind of just suspend disbelief and go into it knowing this is fun. This is not supposed to be educational.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's a fun show. And then the last thing I'm watching is very different from those two. It's Taste the Nation with Padma Lakshmi.
Oh.
And it's the show that I have to watch, like Brigid was saying, I either have to watch it while I'm eating or right before dinner because all the food on it is so good looking. And it's a really interesting, it's like, I describe it as like a food essay in video format. And each episode explores a different culture and their cuisine in America. And it's all about what makes American food and what makes, where our food comes from when immigrants come in, how do they change the makeup of America, and how does their food integrate with the country? And it's really good.
Yeah,
very thoughtful.
It's extremely thoughtful, and the food is all delicious looking. It's so good.
Now I'm thinking about what I'm going to have for dinner.
But I thought the episode, there's an episode about like German Americans that I thought was really interesting because it's like, here is a distinct like population group of the United States, but we kind of don't tend to think about like German food and like what it means to be a German American, and it explores kind of like, what is German food, why is it just American food, and why did the kind of German identity get like lost in this country, which the obvious reason is World War II happened. So that's cool. But I thought it was really interesting. And her also like when she talks about Indian food, because she is obviously an immigrant from India. That one was the real like, I want to eat this food episode for me, where I was just like, all of this is delicious.
I know. She went to a place in Queens or like Brooklyn or someplace, and I was like, I have friends in New York. I could go and like find out where this place is, and we're so close. Too bad we're in a pandemic.
Yeah. All right, so I think that's everything that we were going to talk about today. I hope that we found something that you guys want to watch out there in the viewing public. And we'll be back in the future for more exciting streaming options. Until then, check out our virtual programming on whitfieldlibrary.org and on our YouTube channels and our Facebook and all of those things as we keep going, get right back on the fall, right?
Okay.
All right.
Thank you. We'll see you next time.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.